Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. What do you call 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. Now, while it's easy to make lawyers the butt of jokes, the profession lends itself to some of the most dramatic and memorable scenes and stories from the movies. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, a look at some of the silver screen's most memorable military lawyers. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
I want to focus on the moral compass of military lawyers. Although the military engages in war and it's difficult to find any morality in war, the subject of military lawyers who have a moral compass is difficult but worthwhile. I'm going to examine the moral compass of military lawyers in 3 films: The Caine Mutiny, representing World War II, The Rack, involving the Korean War, and A Few Good Men, representing the Marine Corps on Guantanamo Bay, Cuba in 1986. A quick primer about the military justice system. Imagine you're an employee at a large company. You spent many years of devoted service, climbed the corporate ladder, obtained degrees and/or certificates for advancement, and hope to retire from this company. You're accused of some act and fired. Conversely, you accuse the company of some injustice, and you're fired out of retaliation. In civilian life, you seek the advice of an attorney, bring the charges, attempt to settle in mediation or arbitration, and your final step is to go to court. The type of court you all know: judge, jury, etc., etc. Continuing my hypothetical, assume the only legal redress available to you is a tribunal within your company. Not a single judge, but a tribunal of 5, 7, 9 people, drawn from the C-suite or senior managers within your company. Your defense counsel or prosecutor is furnished to you at no charge to you by the company. Likely the in-house corporate counsel's office. At your own cost, you may obtain outside counsel. The corporate tribunal may uphold the original action, deny your complaint if you're the accuser, demote you with a reduction in pay and benefits, suspend you without pay, fire you, or put you in jail. I want you to know what a jacket is. Think of it like a detailed transcript of your grades. It's filled out by your branch of service at the time of enlistment, and every screw-up, commendation, supervisor's observation is placed inside this jacket and follows you throughout your career. One black mark could mean a lack of promotion and duty station preference denied. To officers, their jacket is very important, and I'm going to refer to this in my analysis. Let's go looking for the moral compass. The Caine Mutiny, 1954, Columbia Pictures. I'm going to refer to the actors' names instead of characters' names to eliminate confusion. It's about a mutiny on board ship and the resulting military tribunal. It's based upon a novel written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning Herman Wouk, who served as a lieutenant in the Navy in World War II. Herman Wouk was a Jew, and this is important when I discuss a central character in the film named Barney Greenwald, played by Jose Ferrer. He's a Jewish attorney serving as defense attorney to the accused, Van Johnson, the actor, who is brought up for court-martial under Article 184, relieving the captain of the ship. The ship is the minesweeper, the Caine. It's a rust bucket based in San Francisco. It's a protagonist representing failure to those serving on board, a place to do your time until your enlistment is up. The morale is very low. Look for a young Lee Marvin and Jerry Paris. Jerry Paris is the subject of another podcast. Who was Jerry Paris? Bogart is 53 years old in this film. His last film was The Harder They Fall in 1956. He died in 1957. So he's brought in from the war at sea to take over command of this rust bucket, the Caine. He is not Rick from Casablanca, and he's not Sam Spade. He's an older man. And I notice he's only a lieutenant commander, and he's in his 50s. Nothing happens in film by accident, a maxim of my podcast. A man of this captain's age would have been a full captain, or at the very least a commander. This low rank implies to me he's a career Navy officer, but not the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's implied he had battle fatigue and was sent to take over command of the Caine In today's parlance, it's most likely PTSD, but in my opinion, his behavior looks a lot like early onset dementia and other psychological maladies, maybe OCD when he goes through that whole strawberry incident, the rolling of metal balls in one hand. I'd like to think that ad lib of the rolling of the balls was invented by Bogart. And that line he utters.
Now that I recall, he might have said something about mess boys, and then again he might not. I questioned so many men, and Harding was not the most reliable officer.
I'm afraid the defense has no other recourse than to produce Ensign Harding.
Now, there's no need for that. I know exactly what he'll tell you. Lies. He was no different from any other officer in the wardroom. They were all disloyal. I tried to run the ship properly with a book, but they fought me at every turn. If the crew wanted to walk around with their shirt tails hanging out, that's all right. Let them. Take the tow line. Defective equipment, no more, no less. But they encouraged the crew to go around scoffing at me and spreading wild rumors about steaming in circles and then old Yellowstain. I was to blame for Lieutenant Merrick's incompetence and poor seamanship. Lieutenant Merrick was the perfect officer, but not Captain Queeg. Ah, but the strawberries, that's where I had them. They laughed at me and made jokes. But I proved beyond the shadow of a doubt and with geometric logic that a duplicate key to the wardroom icebox did exist. And I'd have produced that key if they hadn't pulled the Caine out of action.
But he was determined to whip the rust bucket in shape. Van Johnson is a lieutenant. He's second in command, a career sailor. He will later turn out to be a victim, as I will show. So Bogart's arrival as the new captain pisses everybody off, and he's immediately hated by everybody except Johnson. Fred McMurray is a lieutenant. He's writing a book.
Has the thought ever occurred to you that our captain might be unbalanced?
Oh, cut the jokes, Tom.
I'm no psychiatrist, but I know something about abnormal behavior. Captain Queeg has every symptom of acute paranoia. It's just a question of time before he goes over the line.
Step outside, Keith.
I'd like to stay, sir.
Let him. He studied psychology at college.
You're fooling with dynamite, Tom.
Will you look at the man? He's a Freudian delight. He crawls with clues. His fixation on the little rolling balls, the chattering in second-hand phrases and slogans, his inability to look you in the eye, the constant migraine headaches, shirt tails, and tonight's pathetic speech. Forget about my turning yellow. My dog likes me.
He's a square peg in a round hole. He's not buying into regimentation. Nothing better than McMurray playing bad. Remember, double indemnity. McMurray's character brings some armchair psychological evaluation to Van Johnson's character's attention, who have nothing to do with it, but begins to secretly begin a diary of events. There are several screw-ups, including Bogart's character being preoccupied as the ship circles and cuts a chain towing a target, cutting short escort duty for landing craft, and accidentally dropping yellow dye markers. Van Johnson's character begins to come around to thinking McMurray and the other officers may be correct about Bogart's character's mental acuity and the ability to command the ship. They decide to bring the matter to Admiral Halsey's attention, who is on board an aircraft carrier. Admiral Halsey is Chief of Operations for the Pacific Fleet, who agrees to meet. It's the right move, but at McMurray's suggestion, they chicken out just before entering Halsey's office. Why? I think it's the military jacket. Halsey would have taken the matter up, but the mere bringing it to his attention would likely have had negative effects upon careers. In my opinion, McMurray's character is Brutus in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, the instigator, manipulator, coward, and the writer who only cares about leaving the Navy. The ship sails into a typhoon, and Bogart's character doesn't appear in control of his faculties. Van Johnson's character decides to take over command, invoking Article 184, and we end up in court. Military court. Van Johnson's character is charged with mutiny. His life is on the line. If convicted, McMurray and the other officers will be similarly charged. We're introduced to Lieutenant Barney Greenwald, a potential defense attorney. Here is the moral compass. He tells Johnson's character, I don't know if I'll take the case, but 8 other attorneys declined it. Remember jackets. Barney sees an underdog and decides to take the case. I also think Barney came up against anti-Semitism and wanted to stick it to the Navy. He didn't care about any jacket. He was returning to private practice after the war, but I think he would like to add a successful court-martial defense to his resume. My take. When he walks into the room, I notice he's wearing the dress uniform of a lieutenant, Navy lieutenant. One hand is bandaged, and he's wearing aviator wings. The bandaged hand of Barney Greenwald, I believe it's a metaphor for that tribunal tying one arm behind Barney Greenwald's back. In the very first minutes in the tribunal, the chief of the tribunal, a captain, tells Barney,
Mr. Greenwald, the career of an officer with a 14-year unblemished record is involved here. The court understands your zeal, but I warn you that you bear full responsibility for your conduct of the case. The court will hold in abeyance the prosecution's motion.
You know, the chief of this tribunal knows Barney Greenwald can destroy the captain's character instantly, but will have nothing to do with it. Gee, do you think the captain, maybe wanting to ascend to admiral, is thinking about his jacket? In my opinion, that captain is saying, I know you're a hotshot Jew lawyer in private practice, but in my tribunal, watch out. That's just my take. What's with the aviator wings? Columbia Pictures had difficulty getting the Navy's participation in this film. The Navy doesn't want to speak about mutiny. So we're forced to watch the very first frame, a still, which says something like, and I'm paraphrasing, in the history of the Navy, there's never been a mutiny. This is a fictional account. I believe, this is my personal take, the aviator wings were placed on Jose Ferrer's character, Barney Greenwald, to make him palatable to the movie-going audience of 1954, many fresh out of World War II, who would resent a Jewish lawyer taking down a career sailor, a captain, and returning to a cushy private life. Herman Wouk was the author of the book, a Jew and served in the Navy. Think about it. Van Johnson's character is placed on the stand and questioned by the prosecutor, played by E.G. Marshall.
Mr. Merrick, just a few questions. Would you say your grades in high school were average?
Lower than average.
And in college?
Lower than average.
What training have you had in psychiatry or medicine?
None.
Where did you get the idea that Captain Queeg was mentally ill?
Out of books.
What books? Name the titles.
Oh, I can't remember them.
Mr. Merrick, define schizophrenia.
I can't.
What is a manic depressive?
I don't know.
What's the difference between the words paranoid and paranoia?
I don't know.
In truth, then, Mr. Merrick, you don't know what you're talking about when you discuss mental illness.
We find out Van Johnson's character barely graduated and is humiliated. Gee, I guess that's why he was assigned to the Rust Bucket and may have been extremely naive, unsophisticated, and susceptible to the manipulations of Fred McMurray's character. So E.G. Marshall's character puts on the stand a Navy psychiatrist who's published in the field of psychiatry.
I would like to protest the counsel's twisting of words. There's a big difference between real mental illness and minor mental disturbances.
Let me put it this way, Doctor. Could Captain Queeg have been disabled by the severe strain of command?
That's absurdly hypothetical.
Is it? Have you ever had any sea duty, Doctor?
No.
Have you ever been at sea?
No.
How long have you been in the Navy?
5 months.
Have you ever had any dealings with ship captains before this case?
No.
Then I suggest that you cannot set yourself up as an authority on the strain of command, and thus you may be completely wrong about Captain Queeg.
Barney destroys this witness. Barney Greenwald then puts on McMurray's character on the stand, and McMurray's character denies any knowledge of the foul-ups and any participation. He throws his fellow officers under the bus. Remember the jacket? Hollywood career to protect. Second time he was a coward. Barney Greenwald prevails. There's a celebratory party in a hotel ballroom, champagne flowing. McMurray's character shows up, and he's given the cold shoulder by Van Johnson's character and the other officers. Barney Greenwald shows up, and the moral compass says,
I defended you, Steve, because I found the wrong man was on trial. So I torpedoed Queeg for you. I had to torpedo him. And I feel sick about it.
Okay, Barney, take it easy.
You know something? When I was studying law, and Mr. Kiefer here was writing his stories, and you, Willie, were tearing up the playing fields of dear old Princeton, who was standing guard over this fat, dumb, happy country of ours, eh? Not us. Oh, no, we knew you couldn't make any money in the service. So who did the dirty work for us? Queeg did, and a lot of other guys. Tough, sharp guys who didn't crack up like Queeg.
But no matter what, Captain Quigg endangered the ship and the lives of the men.
He didn't endanger anybody's life. You did, all of you. You're a fine bunch of officers.
And then Barney Greenwald takes aim at McMurray's character.
And now we come to the man who should have stood trial. The Caine's favorite author. The Shakespeare whose testimony nearly sunk us all. Tell him, Kiefer.
No, you go ahead. You're telling it better.
You ought to read his testimony. He never even heard of Captain Queeg.
Let's forget it, Barney.
Queeg was sick. He couldn't help himself. But you're real healthy. Only you didn't have 1/10 the guts that he had.
Except I never fooled myself, Mr. Greenwald.
I'm going to drink a toast to you, Mr. Kiefer. From the beginning, you hated the Navy. And then you thought up this whole idea. And you managed to keep your skirts nice and starched and clean, even in the court-martial. Steve Merrick will always be remembered as a mutineer. But you'll publish your novel, you'll make $1 million, you'll marry a big movie star, and for the rest of your life, you'll live with your conscience, if you have any. Now, here's to the real author of the Caine Mutiny. Here's to you, Mr. Kiefer. If you want to do anything about it, I'll be outside. I'm a lot drunker than you are, so it'll be a fair fight.
Barney Greenwald resents destroying Bogart's character, and his moral compass is in tilt. Read the book. It actually takes you into the post-trial lives of each character. So who are the victims? Bogart's character, Van Johnson's character. His jacket is ruined. If he wants to stay in the Navy, he's going to be advised to get out. And, of course, Barney Greenwald. The Rack, 1956, MGM, based upon a teleplay by Rod Serling. Paul Newman is an Army officer. He's tried for collaboration with the enemy, the North Korean Army. His father is a retired Army colonel, played by Walter Pidgeon, who hears this evidence of his collaboration with the enemy.
I want to ask you a question. I want a simple, direct, yes or no answer. Did you collaborate with the enemy? Did you collaborate with the enemy?
Yes, I did.
Why didn't you die? Why didn't you die like your brother did? It would have been much better that way. Dad! Dad!
I would have liked it better, too. A nice, clean, acceptable death with dignity. Does that make sense to you?
Your excuses for treason must have been tremendous to make you crawl on your belly and break faith with your country and me.
With you? What about me? You know what I got for that crawl on my belly? You know what I got, Dad? Well, I'll tell you. I sold my soul for a blanket that smells of fish and urine and 3 lousy hours of uninterrupted sleep. You know what else, Colonel? At the time, I thought I was getting one hell of a bargain.
He's assigned a defense attorney named Major Sam Moulton, played by Wendell Corey. There's not much given for the motivations behind the acceptance of the case by Sam Moulton. But remember the jacket. There's huge ramifications for this officer to take on the case, but does it with empathy and understanding. Lee Marvin is a captain who witnessed the collaboration and is a key prosecution witness. It's devastating to the defense.
Who was Pack? He was the person they had running this place. He was a psycho. He told them to chain me up.
Did they chain you by your hands or by your feet?
By the feet. They pulled the chains tight around my legs and they kicked them in. My legs started to bleed. They kicked them in some more until they went against the bone. And they took off all my clothing and they strung me up from the ceiling. There was a beam up there. They hung me upside down the way you would a hog. Then one of those got on a chair and he had a...
Did you lose consciousness?
But they pulled my head around by the hair so that some of the blood would clear my brain. They'd throw something in my face.
What did you do?
Oh, I was mad. I Call them things they didn't need an interpreter for.
Did they do anything else to you?
I remember Pack told them not to put out the cigarette butts on the floor because they were trying to keep the prison clean, so they put them out on me.
Your naked body?
Yes.
How many?
They smoked a lot.
Lee Marvin was wounded as a Marine in World War II. It's easy for him to bring the searing dislike for Newman's character. The Korean War raged between 1950 and 1953. This film was made on the heels of the Red Scare, the McCarthy hearings on un-American activities, the blacklist. But geopolitically, I don't think the public in the United States got it. I think it was just fatigue from World War II. It was a ballsy character for Newman to take on early in his career. It was only his third film. His character undergoes unspeakable physical and mental torture. And The Rack explores the breaking point everybody has. For Newman's character, it was a letter delivered by his captors from his father explaining his brother had died. I want you to look at the tear-ridden apology by Newman's father, played by Walter Pidgeon, who breaks down and cries inside a car after hearing the brutality his son underwent.
Tomorrow's the last day, huh? Mm-hmm. You planning on coming home? That is, if everything goes all right? You're most welcome.
Thanks.
Ed, is there always going to be this distance between us?
I don't know. What the hell am I going to do? Can you tell me that? I've lost all three. Will you please tell me what I'm going to do?
Ed, give a little. Won't you please try to give a little? Is that all you wanted?
Oh, God, son. Dear, dear God.
I think it was a one take, and the camera is mounted on the hood, framing them inside the car. It's a beautiful scene. Newman's character is found guilty. Gee, do you think his attorney, Wendell Corey, might have a career in or out of the military? What are the moral implications of living with that loss of the case, knowing Newman's character is likely heading to Fort Leavenworth military prison for most of his life? The final scene, Newman's character is convicted, stands and apologizes to the tribunal.
This isn't going to be an extenuation, but I want to say it anyway. Captain Miller came to my hotel this morning just about dawn. He's the witness who was tortured. He said he'd read the papers and he'd seen my testimony there and he wanted to talk. So we sat down and we started talking about the men we knew who were prisoners over there. He said he thought that every man has a moment in his life when he has to choose. If he chooses right, then it's a moment of magnificence. If he chooses wrong, then it's a moment of regret that will stay with him for the rest of his life. I wish that everybody could feel the way I feel now. Because if they did, they'd know what it's like to be a man who sold himself short and who lost his moment of magnificence. I pray to God that they find theirs.
He owed no apology to anybody except the film goers. Nothing happens in films by accident. Just saying. A Few Good Men, 1992, Columbia Pictures, which also made the Caine Mutiny. The Marine Corps Navy and rivalry runs throughout this movie. It's the court-martial of two U.S. Marines charged with the murder of a fellow Marine. The Tom Cruise character has a moral compass. He calls Colonel Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson, despite the risk of being court-martialed for challenging a high-ranking officer without evidence, calls Jessup to the stand. Kevin Bacon is a Marine Corps officer, and he must defend Nicholson and arrest him. He was charged with trying the two Marines charged with the murder of a fellow Marine. Do you think there's a moral compass in those actions? Arresting a colonel in the United States Marine Corps? What about his jacket and future career in the Marine Corps? Kevin Pollak plays Lieutenant Junior Grade Sam Weinberg. He's the guy that doesn't get the girl. He's on Tom Cruise's team, Navy J Corps officer. He's likely the smartest guy on the legal team.
Did I ever tell you I wrote a paper about your father in college?
Yeah?
One of the best trial lawyers ever.
Yes. He was.
And if I were Dawson and Downey and I had a choice between you or your father to represent me in this case, I'd choose you any day of the week and twice on Sunday. You should have seen yourself thunder away at Kendrick.
Did you put Jessup on the stand?
No.
You think my father would have?
With the evidence we got? Not in a million years. But here's the thing. There's really no way of getting around this. Neither Lionel Caffey nor Sam Weinberg are lead counsel for the defense in the matter of U.S. versus Dawson and Downey. So there's really only one question. What would you do?
And his job, to me, seems to keep Cruise's character on the rails. Nothing happens in film by accident. Do you think Sam Weinberg might be Barney Greenwald? A tip of the hat to the Caine Mutiny? Or just a convenient addition to the prosecution team? I would have used Kevin Pollak's acting talents as an adjunct to Bacon's character, Jack Ross, and given him some red meat dialogue to display his legal brilliance. The two enlisted men, Dawson and Downey, that's their names, are cleared of the murder and conspiracy charges, but they're found guilty of conduct unbecoming and will be dishonorably discharged. Think of the jacket. Do you think it's going to affect their ability to get jobs and follow them the rest of their lives?
What does that mean? How? What did that mean? I don't understand. Colonel Jessup said he ordered the code red.
I know.
Colonel Jessup said he ordered the code red. What did we do wrong?
It's not that simple.
What did we do wrong? We did nothing wrong.
Yeah, we did. We were supposed to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. We were supposed to fight for Willie.
It's almost what Barney Greenwald said to his clients. Military court or civilian court, which do you choose? Until I see you next time, leave behind a soft footprint because everything will end up in your jacket. Class is dismissed.
And if I may add 2 more films to the discussion, I highly recommend Courage Under Fire and Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. And to the men and women of our armed forces, both active and veteran, we salute you for your service and bravery. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at the Jonathan B. Farini Story Collection at jonathanfarini.com. There you'll find everything from drama to romance, something for every reader, as well as the full archive of past editions of the Razors Inc. podcast. That's jonathanfarini.com, Farini with 2 R's, 1 N. Or drop an email to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.